And straight after that, we've got Poppy. If you haven't seen Poppy's channel, go and check him out too. He's good for a chat. He's fun. And he makes cool stuff.
Hey gang, Poppy here, I'm back. This is the first segment of my hashtag Toolfest 2021 #2. What I'm about to talk about is fairly well accepted. Okay? Gauge blocks. A lot of people think gauge blocks is the do-all, end-all, be-all of measuring stuff. I admit, gauge blocks are good, right? To properly use gauge blocks, you need a metrology room. This is an enclosed space. It's air-conditioned to keep it 68 degrees Fahrenheit within a half a degree. It's also expensive because you have to leave that air conditioning system on all the time. You can't turn it off at 5 o'clock when you go home. Because when you come back at 8 in the morning, the temperature in your metrology room has changed. It'll be too hot or too cold. Most likely too hot. Unless it's too cold. Anyway, either of those situations you do not want. Gauge blocks have to be kept at 68 degrees Fahrenheit. They're made to be used at that temperature. When you're using gauge blocks, you're talking about down to a couple of millionths of an inch, where 1 degree Fahrenheit, either way, it either grows or shrinks, but it's not the right size. So you have to keep that air conditioner going all the time. It's like that episode of Superman where it was a holiday. The blast furnace was kept on because they had to keep it up to temperature even though everyone went home for Christmas. I think it was Christmas. It was a big federal holiday. No one works. They had to keep the blast furnace going because they couldn't let it go down in temperature. It'd be days to get it back up to usable temperature. Well, with metrology rooms, it's like that. You turn the air conditioning off overnight, you come back in the next day, it'll take 3 or 4 days to get back to the temperature you need. So that gets expensive. Okay. And you have to have forced air filtered. Forced air. It has to be really clean room. I mean, putting together hard drives, etching printed circuits on pieces of silicon. That level of clean room, because the slightest speck of dust can throw your measurement off a millionth of an inch. A dandruff flake. In the metrology room, you'll see the guys wearing a coat so they can keep warm. They may have mitts on. A lot of times there are insulated handles on the handle that holds the gauge blocks. Or your square or your straight edge. There'll be insulated hand grabs because you don't want your hand to heat up your gauge blocks or your straight edge or your square. Now, good metrology rooms, there's 2 rooms. There's the outer room, which communicates with the shop. That's where they bring stuff in, make sure it's good and clean, then they let it soak, cold soak, for a day or 2. Yeah. Remember, you want it 68 degrees. You don't want it up here at 78 degrees shop floor temperature. You know? And I only worked in 2 machine shops that were air conditioned on the shop floor. High school machine shop, and the last machine shop I worked in that someone else owned. It was a big one. The shop floor was air conditioned because boss didn't want the machinists passing out from heat or freezing and shivering, and they can't keep their hands steady to work. But had a metrology room, 68 damn degrees, period. Okay? Now, that outer room, like I said, communicates with the shop. They bring stuff in, close that door, and they clean the parts. Dry them, rack them over here, and they sit 24 hours, 48 hours to cold soak down to 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Then, when the parts are clean and they're cold soaked to 68 degrees, then they can open the door to the other part of the metrology room where they actually do the measuring. Bring them in, close the door. They may let it sit for a little bit to re-regulate the temperature in the high quality, high precision part of the metrology lab. Then, that's where they keep the 2 highest grade of their gauge blocks, the double A's and the single A's. Double A's are sometimes called laboratory master. They don't touch that part off the shop floor. They touch the A grade blocks to make sure that they're still accurate. Maybe once a year they'll drag in the B grades, clean them, cold soak them, then bring them in and check them. Okay? Yeah. Now the B grades, those are shop floor. Those are the ones the monkeys out in the shop are setting up the grinder and the mill and testing the alignment on, their lathe to see if the compound is at the exact angle they want. Sometimes you might see someone take A grades out on the shop floor. They may have A grades out on the shop floor, but they aren't metrology room A grades. They're shop floor A grades. They've been demoted from metrology lab to, oh, use them out in the shop. Like I said, the double A's, or sometimes called laboratory masters, they don't touch the parts off the shop floor. They touch the B grade and the A grade. Occasionally a micrometer or a pair of calipers. Or maybe they've got a dial indicator they're not too sure about. It may be a little bit wonky. Goes through the same process. In, clean, cold soak. Then they can bring it in and set up their test apparatus. Okay? Now you notice I mentioned B grade, shop floor blocks. They're not as precise as A grade, which aren't as precise as the double A. A common value for the double A laboratory masters are within 2 millionths. I believe the A grade is supposed to be within like 5 to 7 millionths. And B grade, they're supposed to be like around 10 millionths. But that's getting kind of superfluous if the shop floor is 80 degrees. Boom. Talk about metal expansion due to the coefficient of expansion from heat. Yeah. That's why the laboratory masters stay in the laboratory and they don't measure nothing off the shop floor. Unless it's a micrometer. Okay, this is the end of part 1 of my Toolfest 2021 number 2. Hey gang, Poppy here. This is part 2 of Toolfest 2021 video number 2. This is where it's going to get controversial. This is where people are going to be throwing beer cans at the screen, wondering where I live so they can show up with a shotgun. Okay, these are gauge blocks. They're most of a set of Weber B grade. Shop floor. This one's a brown and sharp. This one's a Weber. This is a 3-inch Weber. Right now, these are B grade. I know they're B grade because here is it. This is the 1/2 inch. Yeah. Here's a Weber 1/2 inch. I know it's a B grade because I measured it with my digital micrometer. 0.503. No, 5003 inches. 0.003 of an inch oversize. This is definitely a grade B gauge block. A wouldn't be that fat. A double A definitely wouldn't be that fat. I got these at a yard sale. I paid like 20, 25 bucks. I could tell that they were old. Been on the shop floor way too long. Since then, I've cleaned them and tried ringing them together. There were only 2 that would ring together. But that's okay. I don't have an air-conditioned shop. I definitely don't have a metrology room. I'm not rich. Now, here is a tool you might see used in a metrology lab. It's a Magnetizer Demagnetizer. In a metrology lab, they'd use this to demagnetize a gauge block. Or say this is a part off the shop floor. Demagnetize it. Right? See how that didn't ring together long? That's because these are frosty. They got condensation on them. That's the only reason these 2 stuck together. Now, If you don't have an air-conditioned shop and you don't have a metrology room, it don't matter if your gauge blocks are A, double A, or B grade shop floor blocks. If they're old and won't ring together, magnetize them. Oh, I can hear the screaming already. Magnetize the gauge blocks! Ah! They're out on the shop floor. You understand? They're out on the shop floor. They're not in the metrology lab. Eh? Not ringing together, not holding each other. Magnetize one or both. Then they'll hold together. Then all you have to do is worry about keeping the faces clean and uncorroded. And you can always demagnetize them. This has been Poppy's Workshop. Hashtag ToolFest 2021 video number 2. And since it's part 2, there we go. Since it's part 2 of video 2, the most controversial part, go ahead and comment. Tell me I'm crazy. I will be right back. FedEx is here to pick up the broken TV they brought yesterday. Ah! Okay.
And then carry it out to the yeah. Thought I heard some yeah, I saw you standing on the lift and fall down like that. I watched you in the monitor here. I saw you. And you brought him to the house.
You're gonna log it on your, okay. My wife talked with FedEx. They said you're going to pick it up. She couldn't get a response from Walmart. Yeah, we don't have a car. $20 to get it to fucking Walmart. That's a Christmas present. Okay. He dropped her taking out the fucking truck. Then he brings it to the house and it falls over again.
Stop screaming. You apologized like 4 times. Haven't you ever heard of forgiveness? Oh, shut up.
I don't know if you heard the FedEx driver. He told me he dropped it, taken it out of the truck yesterday. Then he brings it to the door, and I saw him in my monitor. The monitor is the front door. He set it down on end, and it fell this way. You know, he set it down like this, and it goes boom. Yeah, he sets it down like this, and it goes boom. I saw that. He just admitted he dropped it, taking it out of the truck. This has been hashtag Toolfest 2021 Part 2, with the added benefit of don't trust FedEx with your parcels. Good night from California. Stay safe and try and keep a good frame of mind. I'm going to go and have a couple of beers and get a good frame of mind back. Good night from California.